Welcome to the 5 Minute Biographies YouTube channel. Here is your host, Wayne Armstrong.
Hi guys, welcome to 5 Minute Biographies. Before we get started, I'd just like to remind you to hit the subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the episodes we've got coming along in the future. And also to mention that you can read a transcript of the show on the website at 5minutebiographies.com, and you can listen to the show on the podcast at 5minutebiographies.com/pod. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And if you enjoy the show and would like to say thanks by, say, buying me a coffee, please head on over to 5minutebiographies.com/coffee to see how. Right, with that all being said, let's get on with the show and episode 59, Oscar Wilde. Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde was born on the 16th of October 1854 in Dublin, Ireland, to parents Sir William Wilde, Ireland's leading oto-ophthalmologist, that is, a specialist in ear and eye conditions, and his wife Jane, who was a nationalist and poet. Oscar was the second of 3 children, having a brother who was 2 years older than he, called William, and a younger sister called Isola, who was born in 1857. For the first 9 years of his life, Oscar was educated at home, and was even able to learn French from his nursemaid and German from his governess. But in 1865 he joined his brother at Portora Royal School in Enniskillen, where he studied until 1871. Whilst there, he impressed his peers with his ability to speed read and excelled in the classics, winning multiple prizes for translating Latin and Greek texts. Ultimately, he was one of only 3 students to receive a Royal School scholarship to Trinity College. Unfortunately, though, during his time at Portora, Oscar's sister died at the age of only 9 after contracting meningitis. He shared rooms with his brother at Trinity College in Dublin for the next 3 years, with a particular interest in Greek literature after being inspired by his tutor Professor Mahaffy. Whilst there, Wilde also became an active member of the University Philosophical Society, where members discussed artistic and intellectual subjects. He was an outstanding student and was first in his class in Year 1, winning the Berkeley Gold Medal in Greek in his finals. He also competed for and won a half scholarship to Magdalen College, Oxford, where he continued his classical studies between 1874 and 1878. Wilde became interested in Freemasonry, being attracted by the secrecy and rituals involved. By his 3rd year he had risen to the rank Master Mason, although his interest only lasted while he was at Oxford. He also became involved in the aesthetic and decadent movements during his Oxford years, wearing his hair long and decorating his room with peacock feathers, lilies and sunflowers. In November 1878, Wilde graduated from Oxford with a double first in his BA in the Classics. While spending time in London in 1881, Wilde was introduced to Constance Lloyd, the Dublin's counsel, and the pair became reacquainted when she happened to be visiting Dublin in 1884, where Wilde was lecturing. He proposed, and the couple were married at St James's Church in Paddington, London on the 29th of May 1884. They went on to have 2 sons, Cyril in 1885 and Vivian in 1886. But after Vivian's birth, the marriage started to fall apart after Wilde discovered homosexual sex, having been seduced by a young man called Robert Ross. Wilde had been regularly producing fairy tales for magazines and published The Happy Prince and Other Tales in 1880. Following this with 2 more collections, Lord Arthur Saville's Crime and Other Stories and A House of Pomegranates, which was dedicated to Constance in 1891. One of the stories, published in the July 1890 edition of Lippincott's monthly magazine, became one of his most famous titles. Picture of Dorian Gray tells the story of a man who makes a deal with the devil so that only the image of his portrait gets old, while he, in real life, retains his youthful beauty. At the time, though, the story was criticised for its obvious decadence and homosexual allusions, with the Daily Chronicle going as far as to call it unclean and poisonous. Although Wilde defended the story, he nevertheless revised it before it was published in book form in 1891. During this time, Wilde was introduced to Lord Alfred Douglas, the son of the Marquis of Queensberry, and the two began an intimate relationship, with Wilde becoming infatuated, indulging Douglas's every whim. Fame and fortune started to come Wilde's way following the publication of 3 comedies: Lady Windermere's Fan, An Ideal Husband, and The Importance of Being Earnest. The latter is considered Wilde's masterpiece and is his final play. It was written in 1894 and was first performed at the St James's Theatre in London on the 14th of February 1895. 4 days later, the Marquis of Queensberry accused Wilde of being a sodomite. Wilde sued for libel against the advice of his friends, but the trial opened at the Old Bailey on the 3rd of April 1895. To avoid up to 2 years in prison, it was incumbent upon the defence to prove that the alleged libellous statement was actually true, and so the Marquis of Queensberry hired a team of detectives to find evidence of Wilde's homosexuality. The evidence they gathered was presented in court, and subsequently salacious details of the lives of Oscar Wilde and Lord Alfred Douglas were published by the press. Acting on advice from his lawyers, Wilde dropped the case and the Marquis of Queensberry was found not guilty of libel. Unfortunately, this also meant that Wilde was liable for all court costs, which left him bankrupt. On the 6th of April 1895, Wilde was arrested on gross indecency charges. Court proceedings began on the 26th of April, and although the jury was unable to reach a verdict, at another trial which took place the following month, Wilde was found guilty and was sentenced to 2 years hard labour, the maximum allowed. Wilde served time first in Newgate Prison, followed by Pentonville and Wandsworth. The hard labour part of his time served contributed significantly to a decline in health, spending 2 months in the infirmary at one point due to a fall, during which he suffered a ruptured eardrum. On the 23rd of November 1895 he was transferred to Reading Jail, where he served the remainder of his sentence. He was released from prison on the 19th of May 1897 and sailed to Dieppe in France on the same day, never returning to the UK. During his last 3 years, Wilde was impoverished him or allow him to see his sons. Constance sent him money, amounting to around £3 per week. He did spend some time with Robert Ross during 1897 and was even reunited with Lord Douglas later the same year, before the pair were split apart by their families. What little money Oscar Wilde had, he spent on alcohol, and he wandered the boulevards of Paris alone. On the 12th of October 1900 he sent a telegram to Robert Ross which read, "Terribly weak, please come." Ross arrived on the 25th of November, by which time Wilde had contracted meningitis, sent for a priest, and Oscar Wilde was baptised into the Catholic Church. He died on the 30th of November 1900 at the age of only 46. On the 14th of February 1995, Wilde was commemorated with a stained glass window at Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey, and in 2017, one of approximately 50,000 men who received a posthumous pardon for convictions related to homosexual acts, which, under the Policing and Crime Act 2017, were no longer considered offences.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of 5 Minute Biographies. If you did, please hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for plenty more videos to come.